The mist curled around Neric's ankles as he moved silently through the ancient forest. Towering trees with bark the color of burnt sienna stretched endlessly toward the sky, their canopies so dense that only scattered fragments of sunlight managed to penetrate through to the forest floor. The sweet scent of decaying leaves mingled with the earthy aroma of moss-covered stones. This dense woodland that encircled the Avari tribe's settlement had been home to Neric for all his 22 years. Unlike most in his tribe who feared the shadows between trees, Neric found comfort in the wild. The forest whispered secrets that the village elders would never know, secrets of hidden valleys, mysterious caves, and creatures that appeared only in the deepest hours of night. As a hunter of modest reputation, he survived by bringing back game and gathering rare herbs that flourished in the shade of the great red oaks. Yet his heart yearned for more than the repetitive cycles of tribal life. Something beyond the mountains called to him, though he couldn't name it. Today's hunt had been fruitless. The deer had vanished, perhaps sensing the coming storm that the village shaman had predicted. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Neric adjusted his leather quiver, considering whether to return empty-handed or try his luck in the eastern meadows. The decision was made for him when he heard it, a soft, pitiful whimper coming from a thicket of thorny bushes. Curious, Neric crouched low and parted the tangled branches with the tip of his bow. At first, all he saw was a splash of crimson on the dark soil. Blood, fresh and glistening. His eyes followed the trail to its source, and what he found stopped his breath. A small creature, no larger than his palm, lay trembling in a bed of crushed ferns. Its hide was unlike anything Neric had ever seen. Glossy scales in a deep midnight blue that shimmered with flecks of violet when the creature moved. A jagged wound ran along its flank, still oozing dark blood that seemed almost black in the dim light. The creature's eyes locked onto Neric's, luminous eyes of amber with vertical pupils that contracted with fear at his presence. Neric hesitated. The laws of the Avari were clear. No strange beasts were to be brought into the village. Elder Morvith had been explicit about this after the incident with the venomous serpent 5 seasons past. Any creature not recognized from ancestral knowledge was to be left where it was found, or killed if it posed a threat. But this thing, whatever it was, seemed more pitiful than dangerous. Its labored breathing and the way it curled protectively around its wounds stirred something in Neric's chest. It would surely die here, alone and suffering. The elders need never know, he whispered to himself, decision made. Carefully, he removed his leather vest and wrapped the creature gently inside. It made no attempt to bite or flee, merely watching him with those uncanny eyes that seemed far too intelligent for a simple beast. As Neric carried his secret bundle back toward the village, clouds darkened overhead, and the first heavy raindrops began to fall. He would need to be careful. The creature's blood might attract predators, and he couldn't risk being seen by the guards with his forbidden cargo. The village of the Avari tribe clung to the slopes of Mount Korodai, a collection of intricately carved wooden structures built around the natural contours of the mountain itself. Wisps of cooking smoke rose from central hearths, disappearing into the gathering storm. Children dashed between houses as their mothers called them in before the downpour. Warriors stood at rigid attention near the village entrance, their bodies adorned with the tribal tattoos that marked their rank and achievements. Neric slipped in through a seldom-used side path that wound behind the storage huts. His own dwelling, a modest single-room structure on the eastern edge of the village, offered privacy that few others enjoyed. Once inside, he gently placed the wrapped creature onto his sleeping mat and lit a small oil lamp. In a warm glow, the creature looked even more extraordinary. Its scales seemed to absorb the light, creating patterns of reflected color across Neric's walls. The wound looked worse than he'd initially thought, a deep gash that might have been caused by a predator's claws or perhaps a hunter's trap for the neighboring Valerian tribe. "What are you?" Neric whispered, reaching for his medicine pouch. The creature's eyes never left his face as he cleaned the wound with water and applied a paste of crushed herbs and honey. It flinched but made no sound as he worked. From outside, Nirik could hear the drums announcing the evening ritual, a gathering he would normally attend without question. Tonight, however, he would have to risk the disapproval of the elders. He couldn't leave his new charge alone. He was wrapping a strip of clean cloth around the creature when he heard a soft footfall. Outside his door, every muscle in his body tensed. He quickly covered the creature with a fur, just as the door swung open. Princess Alani stood in the doorway, rainwater gleaming on her copper skin. Her long black hair, normally adorned with beads and feathers befitting her station, hung in simple wet strands around her face. Even in this unadorned state, her presence filled the small room instantly. The intricate tattoos that spiraled around her forearms, marks of royal lineage, seemed to shimmer in the lamplight. "The drums have sounded twice, Nirik," she said, her voice lower and more familiar than the formal tone she used in her father's presence. "The elders sent me to—" She stopped mid-sentence, her dark eyes narrowing as they focused on the small movement beneath the fur. "What have you hidden there?" Nirik rose to his feet, positioning himself between Alani and his sleeping mat. Though she was the chieftain's daughter, they had known each other since childhood. There had been a time, before her royal duties consumed her days, when they had explored the shallows of the river together, searching for colored stones and sharing dreams of distant lands. "Princess," he began formally, then softened. "Alani, it's nothing that concerns the council." "Don't lie to me," she said, pushing past him. Before he could stop her, she had pulled back the fur. Her sharp intake of breath told him everything. "By the sacred flames," she whispered, crouching beside the creature. "What is this thing?" "I found it wounded in the forest," Nirik admitted. "I couldn't leave it to die." The creature's amber eyes studied Alani with the same unnerving intelligence it had shown Nirik. After a moment, it made a soft, trilling sound and extended its neck toward her, as if seeking her touch. Alani's hand hovered uncertainly. "This is forbidden, Nirik. The ancient laws." "The ancient laws would have me abandon a suffering creature," he interrupted. "Would your father's wisdom truly demand such cruelty?" A shadow passed over Alani's face. "My father's wisdom is guided by generations of experience. There's a reason for every law." She hesitated. "Have you ever seen anything like this before?" Nirik shook his head. "Never." With evident reluctance, Alani extended a single finger toward the creature. It sniffed her skin, then pressed its snout against her fingertip in what seemed almost like a gesture of greeting. "It has intelligence," she murmured. "And something more." She closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them again, there was concern etched into her features. "Nirik, do you recall the prophecy of the Twilight Sage? The one about darkness arriving on strange wings?" Nirik frowned. The prophecy she mentioned was ancient, a grim warning about a foreign threat that would upset the balance of nature. "This isn't darkness, Alani. It's just an injured animal." "Is it?" Her eyes remained fixed on the creature. "Magic still flows in places beyond our understanding. The ancients spoke of beasts that could change their form, creatures born of storms and starlight." Thunder cracked overhead, making them both start. The creature curled tighter around itself, its scales flashing with pulses of deep blue light. "The council meeting," Nirik remembered suddenly. "You'll be missed." Alani stood, conflicted. "I should report this." "And then what?" Nirik asked. "Will your father's warriors come to kill an injured beast no bigger than a rabbit?" He moved closer to her, close enough to see the tiny flecks of gold in her dark eyes. "Give me time, Alani. Let me heal it, learn what it is. If it proves dangerous, I'll take it far from the village myself." She studied his face, searching for deception. Finding none, she sighed. 3 days, Nirik. I'll make excuses for your absence tonight, but I can't lie to my father beyond that. Whatever this creature is, its fate must be decided properly." Her voice softened. "Be careful. Some things are beautiful only until they reveal their true nature." With that warning hanging in the air between them, she slipped back into the rain and disappeared into the gathering darkness. Nirik looked down at the creature, which had already fallen into an exhausted sleep. "What are you?" he whispered again. "And what will you become?" The answer would come sooner than he expected, and with it, a tide of challenges that would test not only his courage, but the very foundations of the world he thought he knew. Nirik named the creature Kiro, after the ancient Avari word for mystery. It seemed fitting for a being that defied all his attempts at classification. In the weeks that followed his discovery, Kiro recovered from his wounds with remarkable speed. What began as a creature that fit comfortably in Nirik's palm soon grew to the size of a mountain cat, with a sinuous body and a whip-like tail that ended in a tuft of deep purple fur. Keeping Kiro hidden became increasingly difficult. Nirik constructed a shelter for him in a cave system beyond the eastern ridge, far enough from hunting trails to avoid detection. Each day, he would slip away from his duties to bring food and check on his growing companion. Each day, he would return to find Kiro noticeably larger, stronger, more aware. Most alarming was the creature's rate of growth. By the end of the first month, Kiro had developed a row of small, bony protrusions along his spine that gleamed like polished obsidian. His once soft scales hardened into an armor that even Nirik's hunting knife couldn't scratch. When he opened his jaws to receive food, Nirik couldn't help but notice the rows of needle-sharp teeth that had emerged, perfect for tearing flesh. Yet for all his increasingly fearsome appearance, Kiro remained gentle with Nirik. He would press his head against Nirik's chest when he arrived, make rumbling sounds of contentment when scratched behind his jaw ridges, and listen with apparent understanding when Nirik spoke to him of village matters. "You're no ordinary beast," Nirik told him one evening as they watched the sunset from the cave entrance. "Sometimes I wonder if you understand every word I say." Kiro tilted his head, amber eyes reflecting the dying light. He made a series of clicks and rumbles that almost sounded like language. Alani had kept her promise of silence far longer than the original 3 days. Occasionally, she would join Nirik on his visits to the cave, bringing scraps of knowledge from the tribe's ancient scrolls that might explain Kiro's origins. Despite her initial fear, she had grown fond of the creature, though her affection was tempered with caution. The records mention creatures called star seeds, she explained during one such visit, carefully scratching the spot beneath Kiro's jaw that made him purr like distant thunder. Beings that fell from a night sky in the time of our ancestors. They took many forms, but all possessed unusual abilities. "Do you think Kiro fell from stars?" Nirik asked, watching how naturally Alani interacted with his unusual friend now. "I don't know," she admitted. "But look at how his scales shimmer with their own light. That's not natural, Nirik." They both watched as Kiro stretched his growing limbs, his midnight blue scales rippling with inner luminescence. He had reached the size of a large wolf now, his shoulders level with Nirik's knees when standing. "Natural or not, he saved my life yesterday," Nirik said quietly. Alani's head snapped up. "What? You didn't tell me this." Nirik rolled up his sleeve, revealing 4 parallel slashes that had been carefully bandaged. "A mountain cat ambushed me near the river ravine. I dropped my spear in the struggle. The cat would have taken my throat if Kiro hadn't appeared." He still couldn't explain how Kiro had found him. The creature had simply materialized from the undergrowth at the moment of greatest danger, launching himself at the much larger predator with a roar that shook leaves from the trees. "He drove it off?" Alani asked, examining Nirik's wound with gentle fingers. "He killed it," Nirik corrected, "tore into it like it was made of river clay. I've never seen anything move so fast." A troubled look crossed Alani's face. "My father has ordered additional hunting parties into the forest. Tracks have been found, strange prints that the hunters can't identify. And 3 nights ago, something killed 2 goats at the southern edge of the village." Nirik's stomach tightened. "It wasn't Kiro. He's been here with me." "Are you certain?" "Every night." He wanted to say yes with absolute conviction, but he couldn't. There had been nights when he'd left Kiro sleeping in the cave, only to return the next morning and find him alert and watching the path, as if he'd been awake for hours. "I trust him," Nirik said instead. Alani didn't look convinced. "The council is restless. There's talk of the old prophecies, of darkness walking on 4 legs. My father increases the night guard with each passing day." She took Nirik's hand, her eyes intense. If they find him, they won't ask questions first. You know that. Before Nirik could respond, Kiro's head snapped toward the cave entrance. A low growl rumbled from his chest, a sound Nirik had come to recognize as a warning. Someone was coming. Hide, Nirik whispered urgently to Alani, guiding her toward a narrow crevice at the back of the cave. If they find you here, the consequences would be dire. The chieftain's daughter, consorting with a man harboring a forbidden creature. It would mean exile for Nirik at best, and for Alani, the loss of her status and the trust of her people. Kiro crouched low, his body tense for action. The scales along his spine began to glow with an eerie blue light, casting strange shadows across the cave walls. Voices drifted in from outside, 3 or 4 men, moving with the purposeful stride of hunters. Nirik recognized the deep tones of Tarak, the tribe's master hunter and one of the chieftain's most trusted advisors. The tracks led this way, Tarak was saying, fresh from this morning, larger than before. What manner of beast leaves prints like these? Another voice asked. No wolf walks with such weight, yet the stride is too long for a bear. Nirik placed a restraining hand on Kiro's neck, feeling the muscles bunched there like coiled springs. Stay, he whispered, still as stone. For a moment, he thought Kiro would obey. Then a hunter appeared at the cave entrance, silhouetted against the afternoon light, and everything happened at once. Kiro surged forward with explosive force, knocking Nirik aside. The hunter screamed a warning to his companions as the creature burst from the cave entrance in a blur of midnight scales and flashing teeth. The sounds of shouting men and Kiro's resonant roar echoed from the rocks outside. Alani emerged from her hiding place, eyes wide with horror. No! Together, they rushed to the entrance. Outside, chaos reigned. Kiro had knocked 2 hunters to the ground and stood over them, his tail lashing furiously, jaws open in a threat display that revealed rows of dagger-like teeth. Tarak stood his ground a few paces away, spear leveled at the creature's heart. Stand down, Nirik shouted, placing himself between Kiro and the spear. He won't hurt you if you don't threaten him. Tarak's weathered face showed no fear, only grim determination. Step aside, Nirik. That thing is an abomination. No, Nirik stood his ground. He's under my protection. Yours and whose else? Tarak's eyes shifted beyond Nirik, widening as they fell on Alani emerging from the cave. Princess? What treachery is this? Alani straightened her shoulders, summoning every ounce of royal dignity. There is no treachery, Huntmaster. I am here on my father's authority, investigating the strange occurrences in our territory. The lie came smoothly, but Nirik could see the tension in her jaw. Tarak wasn't fooled. Your father sent search parties when you couldn't be found this morning. He fears you've been taken by whatever beast has been stalking our forests. His eyes narrowed. And now I find you with this thing, and the hunter who harbors it. Kiro growled, the sound vibrating through Nirik's bones. The fallen hunters scrambled backward, reaching for weapons that had been scattered in the initial attack. Please, Nirik said, placing a calming hand on Kiro's flank. No one needs to be hurt. Kiro is not your enemy. Kiro, Tarak spat the name like a curse. You've named it? Made a pet of a monster. He turned to Alani. Princess, whatever spell this man and his creature have cast upon you, you must resist. Come with us now. Return to your father. For one breathless moment, Nirik thought she might comply, walk away from him and Kiro, deny any willing involvement. It would be the sensible choice, the safe choice. Instead, she moved to stand beside him, her hand finding his in a gesture that could not be misinterpreted. I'm not under any spell, Huntmaster. I have seen the truth with my own eyes. This creature is extraordinary, yes, but not evil. Tarak's expression hardened. Then you leave me no choice. Both of you will return to the village under guard. The beast must be destroyed or driven far from our lands. Kiro snarled, his body tensing again. Nirik could feel the creature's restraint slipping. No, he said firmly, to both Tarak and Kiro. We won't be treated as criminals for showing compassion to a wounded creature. and Kiro goes where I go. Then you choose exile, Tarak said coldly. By harboring this beast, you break our most sacred laws. And you, princess, his voice softened with genuine regret, your father will decide your fate. As if summoned by those words, a distant horn sounded from the direction of the village, 3 long blasts followed by 2 short ones. The signal for imminent danger. Everyone froze, including Kiro, whose head turned sharply toward the sound. Something attacks the village. One of the fallen hunters gasped, scrambling to his feet. Before anyone could react further, the ground beneath them trembled. A deep rumble rose from the earth itself, like the awakening of some ancient force long dormant. In the distance, a column of dust rose from the direction of the western forest, the border that separated Avari territory from the lands of their ancient enemies, the Valerians. Tarak's attention shifted immediately from the confrontation to this new threat. The prophecy, he murmured, almost himself. The earth trembles when darkness rises. He fixed Nirik with a hard stare. This isn't finished. But for now, the village needs its defenders. The hunting party gathered their weapons and headed downslope at a run, leaving Nirik, Ilani, and Kiro alone in the sudden silence of the mountain. Ilani's grip tightened on Nirik's hand. This changes everything. If the village is under attack, we have to help, Nirik finished for her. The Alvari were his people, regardless of their laws. He couldn't abandon them to whatever danger approached. He looked down at Kiro, who watched him with those intelligent amber eyes, waiting. In that moment, Nirik realized the creature understood far more than he had ever suspected. Whatever bond had formed between them wasn't simply that of a man and his unusual pet. It was a partnership. We'll need him, Nirik said, meeting Ilani's gaze. Whatever's coming, I think Kiro might be the only chance we have. Ilani nodded, her expression grim but determined. Then my father will have to accept both of you, or lose everything to the darkness the prophecies warned would come. Together, they began the descent toward the village, the ground continuing to shudder beneath their feet. Behind them, Kiro followed, a shadow of midnight blue, swift and silent, growing more formidable with each passing step. By the time they reached the village perimeter, chaos had already taken hold. Villagers ran in panicked groups toward the central meeting grounds, carrying children and whatever possessions they could gather. Warriors formed defensive lines at strategic points, their spears and bows at the ready, faces grim with determination. The source of their fear became immediately apparent. From the western forest, a horde of massive creatures emerged, beasts that walked on 2 legs like men but stood nearly twice as tall. Their bodies were covered in plates of what looked like hardened clay or stone, and they carried crude weapons of metal and wood. Leading them was a figure even larger than the rest, adorned with skulls and strips of tanned hide that might once have been human skin. Golem warriors, Ilani whispered, her face pale. The Valerian war chief has finally awakened them. Nirik had heard stories of the golems since childhood, lifeless figures of clay given terrible animation through dark rituals performed by Valerian shamans. According to legend, each golem contained the captive spirit of a fallen warrior, bound to serve even after death. They were supposed to be myths, tales to frighten children into obedience. Yet here they marched, each heavy footfall sending tremors through the earth, explaining the earthquake-like sensations they had felt earlier. Kiro crouched at Nirik's side, a low continuous growl rumbling from his chest. His scales had darkened to near black, but pulses of blue light still rippled across his body with each breath. He had grown again, somehow, in just a brief time since the confrontation with the hunters. His shoulder now reached Nirik's hip, and his jaws looked capable of crushing bone with ease. "We need to find my father," Ilani said, tugging Nirik toward the central meeting grounds. He must have already implemented the defense protocols. They hadn't gone far when they encountered a group of warriors led by Tarak. The Huntmaster's eyes widened at the sight of Kiro, but the imminent threat of the golems apparently took precedence over his concerns about the strange creature. "Princess," He acknowledged Alani with a quick bow. Your father calls for you. He awaits in the temple of ancestors. And what of Nirik? She demanded. Tarak's jaw tightened. The chieftain's orders were for you alone. I go nowhere without him, Alani declared, her tone leaving no room for argument. Especially now. For a moment, it seemed Tarak would refuse. Then another tremor shook the ground, stronger than before, and screams rose from the village edge where the first golem warriors had engaged the Avari defenders. Very well, he conceded grimly. But the beast stays outside the temple grounds. Sacred spaces must not be defiled. Kiro snarled, clearly understanding he was the subject of discussion. Nirik placed a calming hand on the creature's neck. He goes where I go. He repeated his earlier stance. And right now, we all need to focus on the real threat. As if to emphasize his point, a clay-covered arm the size of a small tree, trunk smashed through the wall of a nearby dwelling. A woman's scream cut short into terrible silence. Tarak's expression hardened, but he nodded curtly. Follow me, and keep that thing under control. They hurried through the village, weaving between fleeing families and warriors rushing to reinforce the perimeter. Along the way, Nirik saw the true extent of the danger. The Valerian war party included not only the golems, but human warriors as well, painted in the blood-red markings of their tribe, armed with serrated weapons designed to inflict maximum pain. The Temple of Ancestors stood at the highest point of the village, its ancient stone walls carved with the history of the Avari people. Inside, Chief Kalkaran, Alani's father, stood before the sacred flame, deep in discussion with the tribe's elders and military leaders. Kalkaran was an imposing figure even in his 6th decade, tall and broad-shouldered. With iron-gray hair pulled back in elaborate warrior braids, he wore the ceremonial bear-claw necklace that had been passed down through 15 generations of chieftains. The tattoos that covered his face and arms told the story of his many victories and the wisdom he had earned through trials. When Alani entered, his relief was visible even across the temple's great hall. When he spotted Nirik, and then Kiro, his expression transformed into something much darker. What is the meaning of this? He demanded, striding forward. The elders behind him murmured in shock and anger at the sight of Kiro. You bring an abomination into our most sacred place? During our darkest hour, Alani stepped between her father and Nirik. Father, listen to me. The Valerians are upon us with forces we cannot match. We need every advantage, every ally. This is the creature that has been stalking our forests, one of the elders accused, pointing a gnarled finger at Kiro. The prophecy warned us. Darkness walks on 4 legs before the end times. No, Nirik said firmly. Kiro has been under my care since he was injured and small enough to hold in my hands. He's grown quickly, yes, but he's never harmed an Avari. He's protected me, saved my life. Chief Kalkoran's eyes narrowed as he studied the creature. Kiro met his gaze unflinchingly, amber eyes reflecting the sacred flame. This beast, Kalkaran said slowly, has intelligence in its eyes. Unnatural intelligence. He turned to his daughter. You knew of this? You kept this secret from me, from your people? I did, Alani admitted without shame, because I saw something in him, and in Nirik's care for him, that made me question our ancient fears. Father, what if the prophecy has been misunderstood? What if the 4-legged darkness is not Kiro, but the golems that march against us now? Before Kalkaran could respond, a warrior burst into the temple, blood streaming from a gash across his forehead. Chief, the western barrier has fallen. The golems push through our defenses like they're made of straw. The chief's expression hardened. How many? At least 30 golems, twice that many Valerian warriors. And behind them, the messenger's voice faltered. Behind them walks something worse. A giant with skin like molten stone. Wherever it steps, the earth blackens and smokes. The forged titan, whispered one of the elders, face ashen. The ultimate weapon of the Valerian shamans. It is said that 100 souls burn within its chest, feeding its unholy fires. Chief Kalkaran turned back to the sacred flame, his decision written in the hard lines of his face. We evacuate through the eastern passes. Our warriors will hold the line as long as possible to allow the children and elders safe passage. We'll be slaughtered, Tarak said bluntly. Even our bravest cannot stand against such forces. Would you have me surrender our people to slavery or worse? Calcaron demanded. The Valerians do not take prisoners. They take sacrifices for their blood rituals. Alani stepped forward, her face illuminated by the sacred flames. Father, there may be another way. She reached into her tunic and withdrew a small object that gleamed in the firelight. An amulet of some kind, fashioned from a material that resembled polished obsidian but caught the light in impossible ways, reflecting colors that seemed to shift with every movement. The elders gasped. One of them stepped forward, trembling. The heart of the first ancestor. Child, how came you by this? It has been sealed in the inner sanctum for generations, forbidden to all but the high shaman. Alani raised her chin defiantly. I took it because the dreams came to me. 3 moons, the same vision. A beast of midnight blue standing between our people and a tide of fire. And always, the heart glowing upon its brow. She turned to Nirek. The ancient texts speak of a ritual, a binding of wills between human and guardian beast. With the heart as a conduit, a worthy warrior might direct the beast's power, amplify it. Calcoran's face darkened further. Such rituals were forbidden for good reason. The last warrior who attempted such a binding lost not only his life, but his very soul. Because the beast was unwilling, Ilani countered. But Kiro has chosen Nirek already. The bond exists. It needs only to be strengthened. Outside, another tremor shook the temple, stronger than any before. Dust rained from the ancient ceiling, and the sacred flame flickered wildly. Even if what you say is true, Calcaron said, one beast, no matter how exceptional, cannot turn back an army. Nirek knelt beside Kiro, one hand resting on the creature's powerful neck. He could feel something stirring beneath the scales, a heat, a power that seemed to pulse in time with his own heartbeat. When he looked into Kiro's eyes, he saw reflected there not just intelligence, but a fierce determination, a readiness to fight alongside him. Maybe not, Nirek admitted, but he can buy time for your people to escape, and I will stand with him. Alani moved to his side, the obsidian amulet clutched in her hand. As will I. Calcaron looked from his daughter to Nirek, then to the creature that stood ready beside them. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his stern features. The ritual requires royal blood freely given, he said at last. A princess of the Alvari would be bound not just to the warrior, but to the beast as well. Such a bond cannot be broken, Alani, even in death. Alani met her father's gaze steadily. And let it be so. If this is what the ancestors demand to save our people, I give it willingly. Another crash sounded from outside, closer now, followed by the unmistakable roar of a golem. Time was running out. Calcaron closed his eyes briefly, the weight of his decision visible in the slump of his shoulders. When he opened them again, they held a mixture of fear and pride. So be it. Elder Morvith, prepare the ritual circle. Tarak, gather our remaining warriors at the temple steps. We must hold this ground until the binding is complete. As the temple burst into activity, Nirek turned to Alani, searching her face. Are you certain? If your father speaks true, this will bind us together with Kiro forever. Her hand found his warm and steady. I have never been more certain of anything. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. But there is something I haven't told the others. According to the texts I found, the binding doesn't just strengthen the beast, it transforms it. What Kiro will become? She hesitated. I cannot say. The ancient accounts speak only of the guardian's true form revealed. Nirek glanced down at Kiro, who watched them both with unwavering attention. Whatever transformation lay ahead, they would face it together. He squeezed Alani's hand and nodded. Then let us face this darkness, the 3 of us. As Elder Morvith began drawing complex symbols on the temple floor with powdered minerals, Calcaron approached his daughter one last time. His stern facade had cracked, revealing the father beneath the chieftain. "If there were any other way—" "There isn't," she said softly. "This is what I was born for, father. Not just to lead in times of peace, but to stand firm in moments of greatest peril." He embraced her fiercely, then turned to Nirik. "Protect her with your life, Hunter, or know that even death will not shield you from my wrath." With that final warning, he strode from the temple to join the defense. The ritual circle was completed quickly, a complex arrangement of interlocking spirals and ancient glyphs that glowed faintly in the temple's dim light. Elder Morvith instructed Nirik and Alani to stand at opposite sides of the circle, with Kiro at its center. "The ritual requires 3 elements," the elder explained, voice quavering with age and trepidation. "The bond of chosen guardian," he pointed to Nirik, "the power of royal blood." His gnarled finger shifted to Alani, "and the heart of the willing beast," he concluded, indicating Kiro. From outside came the sounds of battle, the clash of weapons, the battle cries of Avari warriors, and the ominous rumbling growls of the golem horde drawing ever closer. "We must begin now," Elder Morvith urged, placing the obsidian heart of the first ancestor in Alani's outstretched palm. "Princess, you must place the heart upon the creature's brow when I give the signal. Hunter, you must place your hand upon its heart. Both actions must occur simultaneously as I speak the final words of binding." Nirik knelt beside Kiro, feeling strangely calm despite the chaos erupting outside. The creature's amber eyes met his, conveying a trust so profound it stole his breath. Whatever Kiro had been when Nirik found him, whatever he might become after this ritual, the connection between them was real and unbreakable. Elder Morvith began chanting in the ancient tongue of the Avari, words so old their meanings have been lost to all but the most learned scholars. As his voice rose and fell in the rhythmic cadence, the symbols on the floor began to glow more intensely, shifting from faint luminescence to brilliant azure light that cast eerie shadows across the temple walls. The air within the circle grew heavy, charged with invisible energy that made Nirik's skin prickle. Kiro's scales began to shimmer, the midnight blue deepening to something darker than black, yet somehow radiant with inner light. "Now," Elder Morvith commanded. Nirik placed his palm against Kiro's chest, feeling the powerful heart thundering beneath his scales. Simultaneously, Alani pressed the obsidian heart against Kiro's forehead, directly between his eyes. The moment the artifacts touched his hide, Kiro went rigid, his body arching as if struck by lightning. A column of blinding blue light erupted from the ritual circle, shooting upward through the temple roof and into the storm-darkened sky. Above, the ground shook with a violence that dwarfed all previous tremors. Elder Morvith was thrown backward, his ancient body sliding across the stone floor like a discarded doll. Nirik tried to pull his hand away from Kiro, but found it impossible. His palm seemed fused to the creature's scales. Through their connection, he felt a searing heat rush up his arm and spread throughout his body. Across the circle, Alani gasped, her eyes wide with a mixture of pain and wonder as similar energies coursed through her. Within that maelstrom of power, Nirak became aware of something else, a presence in his mind that wasn't his own. Kiro's consciousness, vast and alien, yet somehow familiar, unfolded within him like a midnight flower blooming in accelerated time. Emotions, images, and fragments of memory, not his own, cascaded through his awareness. He saw Kiro's birth among the stars, felt the terror of falling through endless space, experienced the pain of impact and the confusion of waking wounded in a strange forest. He understood now why the creature had seemed so intelligent, so aware. Kiro was no mere beast, but a sentient being from beyond the sky itself. Just as abruptly, Nirak felt Eleni's presence join their mental link. Her essence shimmered like moonlight on water, bringing clarity and purpose to the chaotic merger of minds. Through her, the ancient wisdom of the Avari royal line flowed into the bond, tempering the wild energies with structure and intent. Outside the temple, the battle fell silent. Even the Volurian forces seemed to pause at the spectacle of light erupting from the Avari's sacred ground. Within the circle, Kiro's transformation began in earnest. His body, already impressive, began to expand rapidly. Bones elongated and thickened with audible creaks and cracks. Muscle mass doubled, then tripled. The bony protrusions along his spine extended upward and outward, forming a crest of obsidian spikes that gleamed in the ritual light. Most dramatically, a pair of membranous wings unfurled from his shoulders, stretching to a span wider than the ritual circle itself. When the light finally subsided, Kiro stood transformed. No longer a large predator, but a true leviathan, a dragon-like being that barely fit within the temple's vast interior. His scales had settled into a deep, iridescent black that captured and reflected light in impossible ways. The amber of his eyes had intensified to molten gold, glowing with inner fire. The obsidian heart had merged with his flesh, becoming a gleaming crystal embedded in his forehead. Narak and Eleni found themselves able to move again, both staggering as the direct connection broke. Yet the mental bond remained, a subtle but unbreakable link between the three of them. By the sacred flame, Elder Morvith whispered from where he lay. The legends were true. A celestial guardian. Kiro lowered his massive head, bringing one golden eye level with Narak. Though his jaws could now easily swallow a man whole, his gaze held the same intelligence and loyalty it always had. "We need to move quickly," Eleni said, a new authority in her voice as she helped Elder Morvith to his feet. "The Volurians will recover from their surprise soon enough." No sooner had she spoken than a tremendous impact shook the temple doors. The heavy wooden barriers, reinforced with iron bands, splintered inward as a golem twice the size of its fellows smashed through. Behind it came Volurian warriors, their faces painted with ritual markings of battle and sacrifice. Kiro moved with shocking speed for his size. Interposing his massive body between the intruders and his human companions, he released a roar that shattered what remained of the temple windows. The sound was no longer the growl of a large predator, but the earth-shaking bellow of something primordial and terrifying. The frontmost Volurians faltered, some dropping their weapons in terror. The golem, however, mined a ceremonial spear from the temple wall, her movements fluid and purposeful. "My father and our warriors will be at the main square. We should regroup there before pushing toward the Forged Titan." The mention of the Titan sent a ripple of concern through their three-way bond. Kiro might be transformed, but the Forged Titan represented the culmination of centuries of Valerian blood magic and forbidden technology. Its power was not to be underestimated. With Kiro leading the way, they emerged from the temple into chaos. The village square had become a battlefield, littered with the fallen of both sides. Chief Kalkaran stood at the center of a dwindling group of Avari defenders, his ceremonial axe slick with the red clay that served as blood for the golems. When he saw Kiro in his transformed state, Kalkoran's eyes widened in a rare display of shock. Even more surprising was the sight of his daughter, standing tall beside the beast, spear in hand, and an aura of power emanating from her slender form. The ritual succeeded. Ilani called to her father across the square. "We bring you the guardian of the ancestors." For a moment, hope blazed across the battlefield. The remaining Avari warriors raised their weapons in a cheer that echoed from the mountainside. Even those who had been retreating turned back, inspired by the sight of the magnificent creature that now fought on their side. The momentum shifted quickly. Kiro tore through the golem ranks with terrifying efficiency, his claws and teeth proving more effective against the animated clay than any steel weapon. Where groups of golems clustered together, he unleashed carefully controlled blasts of his starfire, reducing them to smoldering fragments. Nirik fought alongside the creature, finding that the mental bond enhanced his natural hunting abilities. He anticipated attacks before they came, moved with unprecedented speed and precision, and felt no fear even when surrounded by enemies. Through Kiro's senses, he could perceive the battlefield in ways impossible for a normal human, detecting heat signatures of hiding warriors, hearing the subtle vibrations that preceded a golem's attack. Alani proved equally transformed by the bond. The princess, who had been trained in diplomacy rather than warfare, now moved like a seasoned fighter, her ceremonial spear striking with unerring accuracy at the weak points of golems and the vital areas of Valerian warriors. Through her, the strategic insights of generations of Avari leaders flowed into the shared consciousness, guiding their combined efforts with tactical brilliance. As the tide turned decisively in the Avari's favor, a new threat emerged from the western forest. The very earth trembled as the forged titan finally reached the battlefield, a behemoth that dwarfed even the largest golems. Standing 3 times the height of a man, its body resembled living magma, encased in plates of blackened iron. Where it walked, the ground charred and smoked. Steam rose from its joints, and its eyes burned like twin forges in the gathering twilight. Behind it walked a hunched figure wrapped in strips of tanned human skin and adorned with bone fetishes that clicked and clattered with each step. The Valerian High Shaman, architect of the invasion and master of the blood rituals that had created both golems and titan. Chief Kalkaran stepped forward, his warriors forming a protective line around him. "Guardian," he called to Kiro, "the true threat arrives. All else has been merely prelude." Through their bond, Nirik felt Kiro's assessment of the new threat and his determination. The Guardian lowered his massive head, allowing Nirik to climb onto his shoulder while extending his other side to Alani. The princess gracefully mounted the creature, settling between 2 of the obsidian spines that adorned his back. Together, the 3 prepared to face the culmination of the Valerian threat. As one mind with 3 bodies, they would stand against the darkness that had threatened the Avari for generations. A darkness prophecy had foretold, but perhaps had misidentified. The final battle was about to begin, and with it, the true test of their newfound bond. The forged titan strode forward, each footfall creating fissures in the earth. Heat radiated from its magma core, so intense that the air shimmered around it. Behind it, the Valerian High Shaman raised gnarled hands toward the darkening sky, his voice a discordant chant that seemed to strengthen the titan with each syllable. "We must separate the shaman from his creation," Alani communicated through their mental link. Her thoughts flowed clearly to both Nirik and Kiro, a strategy forming between them without the need for spoken words. Kiro's wings unfurled to their full span, creating a downdraft that whipped dust and ash into miniature cyclones. With a powerful leap, he launched skyward, carrying both humans on his back. The sensation of flight was exhilarating, terrifying, and wondrous in equal measure as the ground fell away beneath them. From above, they could see the full extent of the battle. The Avari forces had rallied around Chief Kalkaran, forming a defensive perimeter around the village center. The remaining golems continued their relentless advance, but without the overwhelming advantage they had initially enjoyed. Beyond the battlefield, fleeing villagers made their way toward the eastern passes, the evacuation continuing despite the shift in momentum. The forged titan tracked their flight with its molten eyes, then opened what passed for its mouth, a jagged fissure in its face that glowed white-hot from within. A geyser of liquid fire erupted upward, narrowly missing Kiro's left wing. The heat alone was enough to singe Nirik's hair and eyebrows. "We need to ground it," Nirik thought to his companions. "Those legs look strong, but the joints might be vulnerable." Kiro banked sharply, circling the titan at a safer distance. Through their shared senses, all 3 analyzed the construct's weaknesses. Its movements, while devastatingly powerful, lacked the fluidity of a living being. Each step followed a predictable pattern, a weakness they could exploit. "The shaman is the key," Alani observed. "Watch how the titan falters slightly when his chanting pauses." It was true. The moments when the high shaman drew breath coincided with slight hesitations in the titan's movements. The puppet master could not maintain perfect control indefinitely. Their strategy formed organically through the bond. Kiro would engage the Titan directly, while Nirik and Alani would find a way to disrupt the shaman's ritual. Without conscious command, Kiro swept low over the Alvari warriors, allowing Nirik to lock eyes with Chief Kalkaran. A momentary understanding passed between them. The chief would provide the distraction they needed. As Kiro soared upward again, Kalkaran shouted orders to his warriors. The Alvari battle formation shifted, with archers moving to elevated positions while the chief himself led a charge directly toward the Valerian shaman. The Titan moved to intercept, just as they had anticipated. Kiro tucked his wings and dived, his velocity building to something approaching that of a lightning bolt. At the last possible moment, he twisted, avoiding the Titan's reaching hands, and unleashed a concentrated blast of starfire at the construct's left knee joint. The impact was catastrophic. The superheated energy burned through the weaker material at the joint, sending the Titan stumbling sideways. Molten core material leaked from the wound like blood, igniting the ground wherever it fell. The High Shaman's chant faltered as he was forced to dodge away from his own creation's flailing arm. In that moment of disruption, Kiro landed with earth-shaking force just behind the shaman. Nirik and Ilani dismounted in perfect synchronization, weapons ready. The shaman whirled to face them, his features hidden behind a mask fashioned from a human skull. Bones and fetishes dangled from his robes, clicking together like macabre wind chimes. When he spoke, his voice rasped like stone grinding against stone. "The prophecy speaks true, then," he said, surprisingly calm for someone facing a transformed celestial guardian and its bonded companions. "The Starfallen One returns to its true form. But your coming was foretold by our seers as well, beast. Your power will feed our Titan as the others fed our golems." Ilani stepped forward, her ceremonial spear leveled at the shaman's heart. "Your invasion ends here, Blood Mage. Return to your lands and trouble the Alvari no more." The shaman laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Princess, you understand nothing of what you've begun. The ritual you performed was incomplete. The binding you've created cannot last without the final sacrifice." Doubt flickered through their bond. Was the shaman telling the truth or merely trying to sow confusion? Before they could decide, the Titan regained its footing and lumbered toward them, its damaged leg dragging, but still functional. "Enough talk," Nirik said, readying his hunting blade. Through their link, he felt Kiro's agreement, a surge of determination and protective fury. The battle resumed with renewed intensity. Kiro engaged the Titan directly, his massive form somehow graceful as he dodged the creature's devastating but increasingly erratic attacks. Each opening he created, he exploited with precision, claws tearing at weakened joints, starfire blasting at exposed core material. Meanwhile, Nirik and Ilani faced the High Shaman. Whatever his advanced age suggested, the Blood Mage moved with unnatural speed and agility. From within his robes, he produced a bone wand inscribed with crimson glyphs that leaked dark smoke when activated. "The bound must be unbound," the shaman hissed, waving the wand in complex patterns. Where the smoke touched the ground, it solidified into twisted humanoid shapes, smaller versions of the golems, but composed of shadow rather than clay. As Nirik and Ilani fought these shadow constructs, Chief Kalkaran led his warriors in a flanking maneuver. Caught between two forces, the shaman's attention divided. His control over the Titan weakened further, allowing Kiro to gain the upper hand in their titanic struggle. With a thunderous roar that shook the very mountain, Kiro seized the Titan's damaged leg in his powerful jaws and wrenched. Metal shrieked, and stone shattered as the limb tore free entirely. The Titan toppled, crashing to earth with such force that everyone on the battlefield, Alvari and Valerian alike, momentarily lost their footing. Taking advantage of the chaos, Nirik burst through the ring of shadow constructs and lunged for the shaman. His hunting blade, modest though it was, struck true, piercing the Blood Mage's side. The shaman howled in pain and rage, the sound amplified by dark magic into something that threatened to rupture eardrums. But the wound wasn't fatal. The shaman staggered back, blood seeping through his ornate robes, and raised his bone wand for a final, desperate attack. The wand began to glow with sickly red light, pulsing in time with the shaman's labored breathing. "If I fall, I take you with me," he snarled. "Blood calls to blood, death to death." Alani recognized the ritual he was attempting, a final curse that would use his own life force to taint the bond between guardian and companions, twisting it into something corrupted and destructive. If he succeeded, Kiro might turn on them all, becoming the very darkness the prophecy had warned against. Without hesitation, she leapt forward, her ceremonial spear aimed not at the shaman, but at the glowing wand. The spear's tip, crafted from a metal unknown to modern smiths, struck the bone artifact with unerring accuracy. The resulting explosion sent both Alani and the shaman flying backward. The bone wand shattered into 1,000 fragments, each dissolving in a smoke that withered the grass where it touched. The shaman landed hard, his body broken not just by the impact, but by the backlash of his own interrupted magic. As the shaman's life ebbed away, so too did the animation of the titan. The molten glow faded from its core, cooling rapidly to dead stone. What remained was merely a sculpture of misaligned metal and rock, impressive but lifeless. The shadow constructs likewise dissipated, leaving the Avari warriors standing victorious but exhausted. Chief Kalkaran made his way to where Alani lay, fear evident in every line of his weathered face. Nirik reached her first, cradling her in his arms. Through their bond, he could feel her life force, weakened but intact. The explosion had left her unconscious, with burns along her arms where she had held the ceremonial spear, but she would survive. Kiro approached, his massive form somehow managing to move delicately among the battle debris. He lowered his head, the embedded heart of the first ancestor glowing softly as he examined Ilani through their shared connection. "She requires healing," Nirik told Chief Kalkaran, who knelt beside them with uncharacteristic humility. "But she will live. Her courage saved us all." The chief touched his daughter's face with trembling fingers. "The prophecy spoke of sacrifice," he said quietly. "I feared it would demand her life." Kiro made a soft, rumbling sound that vibrated through the ground beneath them. Through their bond, Nirik understood his meaning. "The sacrifice was not of life," he explained to the chief, "but of separation. The three of us are now bound forever. Our minds, our hearts, our very essence intertwined. That is the price the ritual demanded." Understanding dawned in Kalkorn's eyes. Then the prophecy is fulfilled. When darkness walks on four legs, only the union of royal blood and pure heart can turn shadow to light. He looked up at Kiro with newfound respect. "We misunderstood. The darkness was not the guardian, but what the guardian would face." As the sun set behind Mount Kordai, the Avari began the solemn task of tending their wounded and honoring their dead. The Valerian forces that remained, seeing their leaders fallen and their greatest weapons destroyed, retreated into the western forest from which they had emerged. Alani regained consciousness in the temple, where she had been brought for healing. The first thing she saw was Nirik's concerned face, illuminated by the soft glow of the sacred flame. The second was Kiro's massive head, somehow fitting through the temple's wide entrance, golden eyes watching her intently. "We won," she asked, though she already knew the answer through their bond. "We won," Nirik confirmed, taking her hand gently to avoid touching the bandaged burns. "The Valerians have fled. Your father believes they won't return for at least a generation, perhaps longer. The legend of the Guardian will spread far beyond our mountains." Alani smiled weakly. "And us? What becomes of the three bound by ritual and necessity?" It was a question with no simple answer. The bond they shared could not be undone. They would never again be truly separate individuals. Their thoughts, emotions, and sensations would always flow between them to some degree. It was both gift and burden, freedom and constraint. "We adapt," Nirik said simply. "We learn to be both one and three." He gestured to where Chief Kalkaran stood in the temple doorway, observing their conversation with thoughtful eyes. Your father has proposed a new role for us, protectors of the borderlands. Kiro's presence alone will deter most threats, and our combined abilities make us uniquely suited to address dangers before they reach the village. And the laws forbidding strange beasts? Alani asked with a touch of her old humor. Amended, came her father's voice as he approached her bedside. The council agreed unanimously. Kiro is no longer classified as a beast, but as a guardian spirit made flesh. Ancient texts have been reinterpreted, prophecies re-examined. He placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. What you three have become is beyond our old laws. You will need to forge your own path, create new traditions for those who may follow. Kiro rumbled his agreement, the sound gentle despite his massive size. Through their bond, Alani felt his contentment and his curiosity about the world beyond the mountains. The creature from the stars had found his purpose on Earth, but that purpose might extend far beyond protecting a single tribe. In the days that followed, as Alani recovered her strength, plans were made. A new dwelling would be constructed at the border between the Avari lands and the wilderness beyond, large enough to accommodate Kiro's transformed size, defensible enough to serve as an outpost, but welcoming enough to be a home. Nirik would officially be released from his hunter status and given a new title, Guardian Companion, equal in rank to the tribe's elite warriors. Alani would retain her status as princess, but would divide her time between royal duties and her new role with Kiro and Nirik. As for Kiro himself, he seemed content with these arrangements. Though his intelligence had always been evident, the ritual had awakened something deeper, memories of his origins among the stars, purpose encoded in his very being. Through their bond, he shared fragments of this knowledge with his companions, glimpses of worlds beyond their comprehension, civilizations that spanned galaxies, and threats darker than anything that walked the earth. 1 month after the battle, on the night of the full moon, a ceremony was held at the newly completed border dwelling. Chief Kalkaran, in a historic departure from tradition, announced that Nirik would be formally adopted into the royal line, making his bond with Alani not just spiritual, but sanctioned by tribal law. He raised a tiny creature into a terrifying predator, the chief proclaimed to the assembled tribe. And when darkness threatened to consume us all, my daughter had no choice but to trust in the bond they shared, a bond that saved us all. Let their unity be a lesson and an inspiration to our people for generations to come. As the celebration continued into the night, Nirik, Alani, and Kiro slipped away to the quiet of their new home. Under the vast canopy of stars, they stood together. The hunter who had followed his heart, the princess who had defied tradition, and the guardian from beyond the sky who had found his place among them. Through their bond flowed a single unspoken understanding. Their story was not ending, but merely beginning. Whatever challenges lay ahead, be they Valerian resurgence, new threats from beyond their borders, or the ongoing task of balancing their shared existence, they would face them together. After all, they were no longer merely human and beast, royal and commoner, earthborn and starfallen. They were something new, something that had never existed before in the long history of the Avari people or the countless civilizations that populated the stars from which Kiro had come. They were three who were one, and in that unity, they had found not limitation, but limitless possibility. As dawn broke over the mountain, casting long shadows across their new dwelling, Nirik stood at the edge of the cliff that overlooked both the Avari village and the vast wilderness beyond. Alani joined him, her hand finding his with the easy familiarity that had grown between them. Through their bond, they felt Kiro's presence before they heard him. The Guardian had been exploring the extensive network of caves behind their home, instinctively creating a sanctuary that suited his transformed nature. "Do you ever regret it?" Nirik asked softly, the question directed not just at Alani, but at both his bound companions. "The ritual, the binding, all that we've become?" Alani's answer came both in words and through the warm certainty that flowed through their connection. "How could I regret? Something that saved our people? Something that brought us together in a way no one has experienced before." Kiro's response needed no translation as he emerged from the caves to join them at the cliff's edge. His massive form settled beside them with surprising grace, wings half folded against the morning breeze. Through the bond, they felt his contentment, and beneath it, a quiet excitement for the journey ahead. For in saving the Avari from the Valerian threat, they had merely addressed the most immediate danger. Kiro's celestial memories, still fragmentary but growing clearer with each passing day, hinted at greater purposes. The Starfallen Guardian had not arrived on their world by mere chance. Something had guided him to this precise location, to these specific people at exactly the moment when his power would be needed most. My father believes we should journey to the great council of tribes when summer arrives, Ilani said, watching the first golden rays of sunlight illuminate Kiro's obsidian scales. Word of what happened here has already spread. Other chieftains seek alliance with the Avari now, and wish to see the Guardian with their own eyes. Nirik nodded thoughtfully. Politics had never interested him before, but now, as part of this unique trinity, he understood its importance. United tribes would stand stronger against whatever comes next. The Valerians won't be the last to threaten these lands. Through their bond, Kiro shared a vision, stars shifting in their courses, ancient forces stirring in the void between worlds, and somewhere distant but drawing closer, others of his kind. Whether they came as allies or with purposes of their own remained unclear, even to Kiro himself. Then we have work to do, Ilani said, straightening her shoulders with renewed determination. A new age dawns for the Avari, for all the tribes, and we will be at its center, guiding it toward the light rather than darkness. As if in affirmation, Kiro unfurled his magnificent wings to their full span, casting a vast shadow across the valley below. The morning sun caught the obsidian heart embedded in his forehead, sending prismatic reflections dancing across the cliff face. Through their bond, his message was clear. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Nirik smiled, looking from the princess who had become so much more than his childhood friend to the tiny wounded creature who had grown into a guardian of legendary proportions. The path ahead might be uncertain, filled with challenges they could scarcely imagine, but one thing remained constant. The bond that united them had transformed not just Kiro, but all three of them into something greater than they could ever have been alone. Together, then, he said simply, the word carrying the weight of promise. Together, Ilani echoed, her eyes reflecting the same determination he felt coursing through their shared connection. Kiro's response, with a roar that echoed across the mountains. Not a challenge or a threat, but a declaration. Where once a hunter had raised a tiny creature in defiance of ancient laws, now stood a trinity bound by choice and destiny. Their story had begun with an act of compassion. Where it would lead, not even the stars could say. But of one thing, they were certain, it would be their story to write together.